Yes, sir. So you want to start? Yeah. Greetings of the day, everyone. I am privileged to welcome you all into the third edition of Orange Literature Festival, organized by SGR Knowledge Foundation in association with GH Raisoni University, powered by Raisoni Group of Institutions, a platform that celebrates wisdom, experiences, narratives, and notions from all walks of life. Having said that, it's thrilling to be here with you all today. I am Himanshi Kanthani, delighted to be your anchor for today's session. And that is why on Manipuri Myths for Kids by Mr. Somi Roy, accompanied by Mr. Safa Yakam for illustrations and conversation with Mrs. Jayashree Bharti. Somi Roy is a cultural conservationist and curator who writes on film, culture, and polo for publications in India and the United States. He promotes international polo and Manipuri pony preservation in India and is a film curator who has organized exhibitions for the Asia Society, Museum of Modern Art, Film at Lincoln Center, and Whitney Museum of American Art. He has also translated the original Manipuri works of his mother, the Manipuri writer M.K. Vinodini Devi. His published translations of Vinodini include her historical novel, The Princess and the Political Agent, a Penguin modern classic published by Penguin Random House India, Memoirs, The Maharaja's Household, a daughter's memories of her father. A play, Crimson Rain Clouds, and screenplay My Sin, My Precious. Roy Sir is the founder of MSc, the Maharaj Kumari Vinodini Devi Foundation in his native land, Manipur. It's an honor to have you with us, Mrs. Somi Roy. Along with him, we have Dr. Yamnam Vangam Apanthui. Sir is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Fine Arts, Manipur University. He has awarded PhD in thesis entitled Art and Craft of Manipur, a cultural study of Meeti community from the Center of Folk Culture Studies, University of Hyderabad, and completed MFA in printmaking from IKSPB, Kerala University. He has presented research work in various seminars and conferences and published papers in various journals. He is not only obsessed in exploring art work, but also enthusiastic, working on workflow, material culture, and visual arts. In addition, he had participated in various exhibitions and workshops organized by the Lalit Kala Academy Regional Center and State Kala Academy at regional, national, and international level. He was awarded various awards and honors by the government of Manipur and Art Societies of India. Along with him, we have Mrs. Jayashree Bharti, who will be with us today. Mrs. Jayashree Bharti, the principal of the director principal of GH Raisoni Vidyaniketan and Raisoni's Wonder Kids since 2002, with a gift of gap proficiency in teamwork. Ma'am motivates every member of the team to bring forth his or her leadership qualities. She has three post-graduation degrees in English literature, education, and Bharatanatyam. She is a member of Director, School Connect Peace Foundation, lead collaborator of Hub of Learning CBSC, NGO Paryaparan Prerna Vidarbha Cities and Green Forum, Green Schools of Forest Department, Government of Maharashtra, ex-member of Psycholinguistic Association of India, operating member of NAEYC, Washington, D.C. for GH Raisoni Vidyaniketan. She was the convener of India's first and only National Teachers Parliament, which was blessed by the presence of Bharat Ratna late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam for the inauguration. She is a master trainer for CBS, for CCE, stress management, classroom management, English, etc. She is a freelance trainer for positive parenting, learning centric education, spiritual development, etc. And also, we have three students with us, Miss Aditi Mishra, Miss Rituja Madavi, and Miss Avi Tripathi. And we assure you This conversation gets more delightful as we have Mrs. Jayashree Bhate, who will be in conversation with Mr. Somi as the moderator. I once again welcome you and I welcome you, sir. Also, before moving ahead, I would like to take a moment and acknowledge the support of Penguin Publishers as their association is valuable to OCLF. Now, my dear audience, you are about to experience a conversation between two dynamic personalities. So, without skipping a moment, I humbly invite Mrs. Jayashree Bhate to lead the session.
Thank you, Manshi. We are blessed to actually have these two luminaries with us today. Today, we are going to discuss about a children's book. And that is like, it's a Manipuri myth retold by the celebrated author, Mr. Somi Roy, that instantly connects to our heart with amazing stories right from the very beautiful place, Manipur. The book is adorned with mesmerizing illustrations by the famous illustrator, Mr. Safa, who has also joined us today, that boasts about the art and culture of Manipur. Mr. Roy's vibrant writing style matches to the tone of the accompanying illustrations. Together, they engage not just children but adults too. Decked up with beautiful, rich art, these stories of myths and legends are unique and quirky. For children, it transports them to the faraway lands with myriad gods and twists and turns from mountains to oceans. Young readers, you'll embark on a colorful, rich journey embellished with the sky god Serene, the eternal creator. With your due permission, Mr. Roy, can we begin with the question answer session? Sir, to begin with, stories told in the book, and that's why is equally engaging for children and adults, like I said earlier. I read somewhere that originally this was meant as gallery notes for an exhibition. Could you please shed some light on this?
Thank you, Jayashree, and thank you, Orange City Lit Fest, for having me as a guest. I'm very pleased to be with you. I'm sorry I can't be in Nagpur. I've never been there before, but I would love to come sometime. And I'm particularly happy to see the young students. One is called Arti. Which one is Arti?
Aditi.
Aditi.
She is Aditi, sir.
Aditi. And then what's the other one called?
Rutuja.
Puja.
Rutuja.
Tuja. And the third one?
Avani.
Avani. Tuja and Avani. Okay. Well, Aditi. So I'm very, very happy to have Aditi, Tuja, and Avani with us today because, you know, this book is written for you guys. All right. It's really meant for young adults like yourselves. So it is very special to be able to talk to you. And thank you, Principal Bhake, for bringing them here. It's going to be an amazing thing. I would love to hear a lot from you. But to answer the question that your principal posed to me, the exhibition was something that I had planned for two countries, in the US and in Europe, in Germany and in New York, based on the illustrated manuscripts of Manipur. Manipur has a small but very interesting tradition of manuscripts written on handmade paper. Back then, every piece of paper was handmade anyway. But the manuscripts of magic and sorcery and fortune telling have illustrations. The others don't. But I got very interested in it. And so I was planning an exhibition of these works. And I started writing about these manuscripts. And these stories kind of came out of that. Hopefully, I'll still do the exhibition, but the book has come first now, thanks to Penguin Random House India.
May I now request Mr. Safa also to throw some light on the Manipuri art and tradition being used in this book.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank and for bringing me to this conversation, and thank you, OCLF. For me, as an artist, like I used to, create certain things which comes up in my mind randomly. Sometimes I used to pre-plan, but during the COVID, the office was locked down, and I used to sit down in the home, and during that time, I was reading some books and all. So I found a book which is illustrated manuscript, of Manipur. It was a collected book of manuscript by Mutua Bahadur. From that book, I start to work and to study about the character and the style of the Subikalai Sava, and Kutlo, and there are others manuscript also. So for this particular book, I got to made Tamosomi from through my friend Wangam. So that on the very first day itself, Tamo was saying about the book, and he was saying about the style of the Subikalai Sava. Then I started thinking. There was some interesting between the conversation, in the stories of this book, there are particularly mentioned about a particular hero, particular mythological, that it has a protagonist, it has a character. But in the Subikalai Sava, the manuscript painting, there is nothing mentioned about the specific god and goddess, and specific about the king. But it's very difficult to characterize about the particular character of a particular story. So but somehow I bring some prominent figure which is already found in the manuscript painting of Manipur. Then I created in a new adding with a new ingredient to this contemporary time.
Thank you, Mr. Somi, and thank you, Mr. Safa. The other question which came into my mind was, what was the learning, Mr. Somi, researching and writing for the book?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I can't hear you.
I just wanted to know that what were your learnings while researching and writing this particular book?
This book is about Manipuri mythology. And mythology is usually a part of worship. Religions have mythology as one aspect of religious worship. So that's why there's no such thing as Indian mythology, but India has many mythologies, like Hindu mythology, for instance, right, Aditi? Right? Hindu mythology, and then you have Buddhist mythology, then Islamic mythology, Jain mythology. So even I think the Gonds of Madhya Pradesh have mythology. Like I'm told that Nagpur is about a snake that guards the king, right? That's a Gond story. That's a mythology. Okay. So some traditions are very big, like Hindu mythology is huge with Mahabharata and Ramayana and all that. And some mythologies like Gond is smaller, Manipuri is also small, So our mythology can be found in two different places. One is in the manuscripts, which are handmade and handwritten, many centuries old. And this is before Manipuris became Hindu. We are Vaishnavas, we're Vaishnavite Hindus. But that is 300 years ago. So before that, there was this worship of ancestors and animistic, which is the worship of nature, and so on, and the deification of ancestors, like ancestors become gods that you worship as well. So that religion is pre-Hindu, and so we have manuscripts that talk about these stories that I have selected. The other part is that Manipur, you've heard of Manipuri dance? Yes?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, Advani? Okay. So Manipur is very big on performance, music and dance, theater, etc. So many of the stories have oral counterparts that are actually songs, songs of worship. So between the oral songs and the written manuscripts, which are text, these are the sources of these stories. Now, you won't find the story as I have told you in this book in the manuscripts or in the songs. I had to put them together and rewrite them for Aditi to read, So you have to enjoy it, right? So I have to start with Once Upon a Time, then I have to finish with And They Lived Happily Ever After. But in the manuscripts and songs, the bits and pieces here and there. So I had to put it together. And so I had to talk to my friend Taoyangba, who's he throws out evil spirits and all that, but he's also a very well-known writer. From him, I took it from the manuscript archivist called Kaba, Chanam Hemchandra, and I took it from a balladeer, a Manipuri musician who sings old songs using the pena instrument, which is an instrument with horsehair and bells and all that, and he sings the ballads and the rituals. So I have people that I consulted and drew it. So the many sources have come into this, and that is why this book also interested me as a cultural conservationist, which means that I want to preserve certain parts of culture, which I think is worth conserving. So that is how the research of the book happened.
Beautiful. I was so mesmerized by this answer that, I had another question coming in. This book has been bringing forth the glory of rich Manipuri culture. Somewhere I came to know that it is also connected to the Mighty community and the Puya. Can you please shed some light on the Mighty community and the Puya?
When we use the word Manipuri, which is the name for the people and the language that is recognized by the Indian Constitution, it's an official term. But Meitei is our term for ourselves. Meitei Lon, the language of the Meiteis, is our term for Manipuri, the language. Manipuri is one of the recognized languages in the Indian Constitution. So when people talk about Manipur and Manipuri, it's a short form, it's a conflation of the Meiteis, which is a little bit unfair to the other non-Meitei communities of Manipur, because we have about 30 different tribes who are not Meiteis, but who are Manipuris, right? But when we talk about Manipuri mythology, we're talking about the mythology of the Meiteis, who are the people who live in the valley. So our valley is very small. It's only about 700 square miles, and the state is about 8,000 square miles. So we're basically about 1/10 of the state is the valley. And that's where the culture and the mythology and the civilization of Meiteis resides. And that's where this mythology is coming out of.
Beautiful. It is as beautiful as the location that you have. Your state is.
If I may tell you something, has anyone read the story about the silk weavers? You have. Okay. So this mythology, this Meitei mythology you're asking about, is coming from Manipur, right? So Dave, can you show the two maps? Yeah. So now I know that you all have a good idea of where the states of Manipur are, right? Okay. So you know what happened yesterday? At 5 o'clock in the morning, there was a big earthquake here. Of course, I slept through it. I didn't feel anything. It was 6 on the Richter scale, Aditi. Everyone was shaking, and of course, I was sleeping. And but Richter scale is 10, right? 1 to 10, and this is 6. It's quite powerful. Yeah. So, but this took place just south of Manipur. You know, so the Manipur is. I found it. I'm also learning as I go because I'm not a scholar. Dave, are you going to put the pictures up? Whoa, Dave. So the location of Manipur and the Meiteis and where they come from is very, very tied into the mythology that I write about and I tell the stories of in the book, you know. Okay, so the okay, so now everyone knows where Manipur is, right? On the map on the left. I can't see it disappeared. Anyway, so but hello. So one of the things that I'm going to tell you, Aditi and Tuja and Avani, is I'm going to tell you something that not many people know, and also something that even you might even find in textbooks. Can you guys see the map? Because I cannot. Hello?
What was visible earlier?
Can anyone see
What
the
was
map?
visible earlier?
Hello?
They're doing some certain things.
No, sir. It's not there.
All right. So what happened is that this earthquake happened. Okay. Now, many hundreds of millions of years ago, there was a very, very, very large continent, a supercontinent called Gondwana land, okay, in the south, right? So that broke up and India started floating northwards and it slammed into this other big continent in the north called Eurasia, okay, or Laurasia, it's also called, okay? So that is Europe and America. And Gondwana land is basically South America, Australia, Africa, and India. Okay, so India is floating up and it goes under the Eurasian plate and the land rises and forms the Himalaya. Okay, but Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, the northeast, is actually another formation which is not part of this formation. It is another plate called the Burmese Plate. Okay, and these plates are still moving, by the way. That's why we had the earthquake yesterday morning at 5 o'clock, right? So this Burmese plate is also sliding in. So you have 3 plates meeting in the northeast of India. And that is why, even though some textbooks might even say that we are of the eastern Himalaya, the northeast of India is not Himalayan, this part. It's actually something called the Yoma. The Yoma is a geological term for mountain ranges that run north and south in Burma. There are 3 Yomas over there. This is the 4th one. So the northeast of India is like the Yoma of India. And that is why in the story of the silk weavers of Kurkul, the woman who brings silk to Manipur is from Burma. That is why you have the connection of the land and the connection of the people, and that's where the story comes in of the Burmese.
When we are talking about such a beautiful story, Aditi, can you read out some excerpts from it and we can discuss on this? A wonderful explanation being done, Mr. Somi, a new insight into the perspective towards looking at how the continent has been formed. Thank you so much.
And Sapa can show some pictures also from his illustration of the story. Okay?
Positive. Aditi, will you please read some excerpts from it? Thank you. Please unmute yourself, Aditi. We aren't able to hear you.
I can't hear.
Me too. It's very difficult to.
Aditi, can you please unmute yourself?
Okay.
And she's admitted.
We're not able to hear her. Oh, can she use your phone to speak?
Join from home. Remove that. Just speak.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Now you are. Hi, Aditi. Keep going.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I'm Aditi Mishra from class 10th and I study in GH Raisoni Vidyaniketan school. So I read your stories but in story number 6, that is why the weavers of Khurkul make silk. I would first read the excerpt and then I'll go with the question. The worms grew larger as they fed on the mulberry leaves. Soon the Chakpa villagers saw the worms spinning long, glistening threads with their mouth. They spun and spun with their shiny strings of saliva until they had spun thick, fat cocoons around themselves. Like the princess of Kabao, from which they had emerged, the worms spun in silence. And the people of Kurkul say, should anyone watch them, hands upon their knees, and exclaim their wonder out loud, the worms would stop spinning their threads. That is why the worm is also called Akhungbatil, or the white worm. So my question is, as per the story of making the silk by the Akhungbatil or the white worm, is it the real story behind the making of Manipuri silk, or it's just a folk tale?
It's a very good question, Aditi. Thank you. You read very well. Thank you very much. It's a very good question because people often ask, is mythology true? You know, the answer is it is and it is not. Okay, so mythology, it's not, the point of mythology is not to tell the truth, to say that it is true or it is history, but mythology tells us another truth. It is telling you another truth in another way. I've been to Kurkul, it's still there. And I went and saw these cocoons. They're bright yellow in color. You know, I thought they were going to be white, but actually they were bright yellow, golden color. They're about the size of your thumb, you know, and they had mulberry plants in the backyard, and they used to feed and bring up these things, and they spun these silk, the handmade silk. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful before they put color on it or before they bleach it to make it white. So it is true that Kabo, the land of Kabo, is where the silk comes from. The village of Kurkul is the center of silk weaving even today, handmade silk. Okay, you can't buy it in the store on your main street in Nagpur. You know, it's not sold. You know, I asked them, do you sell it? They said, no, we don't sell it because people come and buy it off us immediately because it is so desired. So it is true. The silk comes from Kabo, which is the eastern part of Burma, next to Manipur, because we're on the border. And that's why we call the silk in our language is called kabrang or kabo rang, means thread of Kabo. So there is a truth there, but it's not a literal truth. But it does tell you a truth, but it is a truth with a capital T. It's not just regular truth of historicity. No, it's not historical. Does that answer your question?
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Insight into the beautiful culture. Thank you, Aditi, for your question. May I now request Rutuja to read an excerpt from another book, because when we are talking about the book, I felt the young readers out there as an audience should be able to understand and get a peep through this window. So, Rutuja, can you just read some excerpts?
Hello everyone, my name is
Hello.
Rutuja Madhavan. I am the student of JS Raisoni Vidyaniketan. And sir, I have read your all the stories, and the story which I liked is, and that is why the white cuckoo drinks only rainwater. So, sir, I will read the excerpt and then I'll ask the question. Okay.
Thank you.
So, then the man cursed the mother cuckoo. Mother pied cuckoo, you and your kind will henceforth drink only the water that falls from the sky. You cannot drink from the river. When you are thirsty, you will call to the clouds above and ask them to give you the rain. Then you will wait for the rainwater and look up the heavens with your beak wide open to quench your thirst, decreed the man. And that is why, dear plays well with the others one white cuckoo comes with the rain clouds of monsoon but never drinks from the river. Instead, she calls for rain when she is thirsty. She waits for the rainwater and for a wide open beak and turned up look towards the sky. So, sir, my question is, as in the epic of Meghdut by Kalidasa, the cloud is personified as a messenger for yaks. And similarly, in the story, the pied cuckoo drinks only rainwater. So, can you compare and contrast the significance of cloud in the both the writings?
What an awesome question. Thank you, Rutuja. That's really an important question. Now, everyone, I'm sure you're tired of looking at my face. So Sapa, why don't you put up your illustration of the pied cuckoo story,
Sure,
and then
sure.
I'll talk over it. Is that all right?
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rutuja, your question is really not just an interesting question, but an important question, because many mythologies share certain stories.
Is it visible?
Yes, very good. And so there are similarities to many mythologies. When there are many similarities, we call them archetypes of mythology. Like, for instance, two brothers fighting over the throne, for instance, is found in the Bible, is found in Hindu mythology, is found in Manipuri mythology, it's found in, many mythologies. The archer coming and shooting the sun, that was more than one sun in the sky, and it was shot down by a warrior. You find that in Chinese mythology, you find that in Hindu mythology, you find it in Manipuri mythology. So where does mythology come from? Does one come from the other? The short answer is we do not know. However, it is very interesting that Kalidas, the great Sanskrit writer, his Meghdut is based on the observation that the pied cuckoo comes with the rains every year without fail. He actually comes from Africa, from East Africa, flies across the ocean, comes to Manipur, and then flies up to southern China. That's his route. Okay? So, and people have noticed, Kalidas noticed, or someone noticed and told Kalidas, look, this bird has come again with the monsoon. So Manipuri has also noticed that the pied cuckoo comes here. So the two stories of the pied cuckoo, one by Kalidas and one in the Manipuri, is based on the ornithological habit of the pied cuckoo. However, the stories are different. In Kalidas, as you know, Rutuja, excuse me, the pied cuckoo flies over India and describes with the clouds, he's flying with the clouds, and the Kalidas, the poet, describes what he sees under him: the beautiful cities, the lakes, the rivers, the mountains, the people, etc. In the Manipuri pied cuckoo story, which is also in a nursery rhyme called Nongobi Sari Laino Ture Laina Se. Now that is written over here by Sapa in Manipuri Meitei script. So that's the
Network connection is lost, I think.
Network issue. But Mrs. Safa, I am so mesmerized seeing your beautiful illustrations.
Okay, thank you.
All the illustrations in every story are so beautifully done, and it gives a various depiction to that particular culture. We are able to peep into that culture through this, the illustrations. And I'm happy that something of this has come down to the students and to the children across India. They would now know what is the Manipuri culture, what is the Manipuri artwork. So it's beautiful, sir. I must appreciate that. And everybody, even my students, we're so happy to see the color combinations, the way it is being done, the depiction of every animal, every character which is being done. Because majority of what we've seen is every story has some or the other animal depiction out here. So it's beautifully done.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. I mean, Somi, I think he lost the connection. Can I will sum up some kind of, I mean, in between, like, uh, as Tamusomi talks about this pied cuckoo, and we also, I mean, from the childhood, we used to hear about the pied cuckoo. Even before the rain, and my mother also used to say about the, reminding the story of the pied cuckoo, because it's almost, I mean, in our folk, I mean, the narrative is very strong, and it has different layers of understanding the culture also. So from the childhood, we have been hearing, I mean, listening such story. But as an artist, when the Tamosomi gives us opportunity to work for particular this work of a book, so I was very happy, and there were some challenges, like the how I arranged every motif, and how I going to narrate through the visually also. So every picture has their own visual language. And it doesn't need, sometimes we don't need the text also. Sometimes, I mean, the visual itself, it has a language, and it's communicate to the audience. So in that I try to read the whole narrative. There are a lot of variation also, I mean, in about this pied cuckoo. So particularly I fixed to this narrative which is written by the Tomosomi, and then I started with the picking up the most prominent character of the pied cuckoo, and to define that pied cuckoo, there is nothing about to represent the pied cuckoo in the manuscript, but in the connection of with the connection of this story, there are five pied cuckoos has five children. So I started with that, I mean, association of the material with the figure. So most of the painting in the character of a manuscript painting, you can find people inside the house or people inside a boundary. So I bring that idea, and try to give that image character to the pied cuckoo, because pied cuckoo is always bounded with her family, and she is always with her child, and she is about to feeding the milk to the and sometimes women of Manipur, how they care about their children. So here, Paikuku can be interpreted in a way like it's a metaphor of the woman of the, Meitei society also. So, and at the same time, there are other, motif like elephant also used to come, tiger also used to come to, say like for the cleaning of the, river and all. So I bring some motif, and I also used to add some particular, color. I mean, adding some my extra color, like to enrich the the effect of the visual, and some of the associated material, like if you represent a human being or a man figure, then it's very difficult. It needs to like give his status also, like a man with the plowing, so these are association of with the man is always used to work outside in the agricultural activity, and the Mite is also one of the group of people who their staple food is rice. So in that way I create in that way.
Beautiful. Illustration speaks volumes. It speaks volumes for itself. Thankfully, we are connected back to Mr. Somi. Yeah, welcome back, Mr. Roy.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
So it has been beautifully continued by Mr. Safa and good insights into the story of the Pied Cuckoo and how the illustrations was done. Avani is all excited to read her excerpts with your due permission. Avani, can you please read out your excerpt, about the stories of 12? Which one did you pick and choose, and why?
Principal Bhake, let me just, if I can just finish my previous sentence, right?
Sure.
So the difference between Kalidas, Meghdut, and the story of the pied cuckoo here, here it becomes a fable, a cautionary tale, saying that if you do not work with your neighbors and your friends and your family, then you will suffer the consequences of punishment. So the pied cuckoo is punished for not taking part in cleaning the river and the lakes of Manipur. And that's why he said, you cannot drink from the river again. You have to wait for the rain to fall into your mouth. And that is from a manuscript called Tuteng Lon. It's about the management of waters. It's an old manuscript. Thank you. Now let's go ahead. Yeah.
It connects to the current lives, the contemporary. It's been a great connect to the contemporary. Avani, over to you with that.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. This is Avni Tripathi from school GH Raisoni Vidyaniketan Sukli. I'm from 8th standard. So I read your stories according to the story number 9. That is why the Manipuri pony is sacred. So I'll read the para first. Listen and listen carefully. Lee Marul said, your father Sorarer is the supreme creator of all things, living and non-living, that exist in the cosmos. He contains all of creation, therefore, is doing. Mama, am I audible?
Yeah, there was some issue related to your audio. Can you please repeat it again, Jay?
Yeah. Okay. Shall I start from the first?
Yes.
So, sir, according to the question, story number 9, and that is why the Manipuri pony is sacred. Sir, I read the para first. Listen and listen carefully. Vimaral said, your father Surarer is the supreme creator of all things, living and non-living, that exist in the cosmos. He contains all of creation. Therefore, you need not traverse the cosmos like Sunamani is doing. Instead, go circle your father 7 times and tell him you have traversed all of creation for everything and contained within him. So, sir, my question is, as Sunamahi is Lord Kartikeya and Pakhanba is Lord Ganesha, in the story, when the father asks both his children to take 7 rides of the cosmos, why is it that the mother Limaral has Pakhanba, that is Ganesha, to circle around the cosmos as father, and why doesn't she tell this so Sunamahi, her eldest son? Why does she do this inequality with her eldest son? So you aren't audible.
Somi,
No, sir, you are not audible. No, sir.
it's not audible actually.
It's an audio issue. Illustration coming in about the Manipuri polo. Mr. Safa, can
Yes.
you help us out with understanding this particular question of Avani? In the time we get back to Mr. Somi.
Okay. Actually, it's very difficult to answer the question. Like I'm not the author of that, but yes, there might be some like as in the previous question also, sir, Tamotomi talks about the archetypes, about the. I mean, we can as a folk in the folk narrative, and it's a kind of the culture is not aesthetic. It's something I mean it's influence to one to another. I mean there, and it carries with the memory, it carries with the it talks from the psyche of the the people. There might be some incident which is very close to the the story of as you said about the Ganesha or Kartik, I mean, if I'm not wrong. So but thing is that here we can.
It's not the same as of our Hindu mythology.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, correctly stated, Avani. There seems to be a great connect between these two stories. That is what Mr. Safa was about to explain.
So in this story, you can find in another I mean cultural aspect, like the story might be somewhere connection. I mean somewhere have a similarity, but every it's kind of an archetype also, and at the same time the story itself is has a local essence that might be. So the how the pony is become a sacred one in this story you can find, and how the relationship of the Pakhangba and Sanamahi, like in this. So my answer might not be fulfilled to you, but I can say in a how I met after reading this story of. Is it?
Hi,
Okay, sir. Thank you.
can you hear me now?
Okay, estamos
Yes,
on
sir, you're audible now.
Okay. That's a good question. It is important not to say that Sanamahi is Kartik or Pakhangba is, that parallel cannot be taken that far. These are separate figures. But there is influence and there is archetypal, as Sabha was saying, and I mentioned before. Like, for instance, in the Bible, you also have Esau and Jacob, two brothers. And the mother again favors the younger son. And with her help, he wins the father's birthright. So his older son, Esau, gets very angry. Okay, just like Kartik, just like Sanamahi. So one can't go so far as to say that Kartik is Esau or Kartik is Sanamahi, but you can say that there are archetypes. There's an archetypal story of two brothers, and I happen to think they actually represent the symbolic. These characters are symbolic characters. What they symbolize is Esau, for instance, and Sanamahi, they are two characters that go outside the home. So they probably are herders from the period of herding and hunting. And Pakhangba or Ganesh or Isaac, there's the younger brothers who stay at home, which represents the advanced to settled agriculture. So it may be symbolizing these two eras of human social development. And so we have to look into multiple meanings behind this. Now, why the mother favors the younger son? Again, the answer is who knows? But it is common in all these stories. These are like stories of the flood, the great flood, or the stories of, like, how Krishna is carried on the head across the water to save him from the evil king. You find the same story in the Bible also. Herod wants to kill Jesus, and Jesus is carried. You cannot say, however, that Jesus is Krishna, or Krishna is Jesus that far. But on the other hand, you can. After all, they represent deities people worship, right? So you have to learn to, and I hope some of you become students of mythology when you grow up, because it's a fascinating field. We have to look into a field called comparative mythology. How do you compare mythologies between different civilizations? There is the specific, that is specific to the place, and then there is the universal, which is shared with other cultures. So every mythology has universal elements and specific elements. And the study of comparative mythology, which is very small and very important, but it is also very difficult and entrancing. You have to read authors like Wendy Doniger, for instance, from the University of Chicago. You can read the comparative mythology of different places to see what essentially is the shared human wisdom, the shared symbolism of all human societies.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So after going through all the inputs that you have been giving me, it shows that there's a vast sea of the Manipuri legacy. It would have been really difficult for you to pick up certain stories for this book. Please let us know, how did you select the stories?
That's really interesting question. Thank you. It is vast, but also very understudied. What you are seeing on the screen now, Sabha's paintings, this is modern art. Sabha is a modern artist. He studied in Hyderabad. He's teaching at Manipuri University. But this is Subika art. So he's creating a new Subika art form. And when I showed this Sabha's paintings to my curator friends in 4 countries, in New York, London, Bombay, and in Myanmar, none of them could say where this painting style comes from. So this is very new. What Sabha is doing is actually groundbreaking. This is introducing a new art form. Some people even see similarities to Gond in the colors, for instance, So, or Mughal in the motifs of the decoration, perhaps. So we don't know. This all has to be studied. This is the very first book that has reproduced this modern Subika painting. In the same way, there is a vast trove of knowledge that still needs to be discovered and studied in Manipur. So when I was selecting the stories, I chose the stories that I was already writing about. I'd written the story of the pony before and of polo before because I work in polo. I do international polo. I bring American and British and Western polo teams to Manipur, and also I send them to Jaipur and to Hyderabad and Bombay and so on, all India thing. So I got into so since I was working on polo, polo players from around the world ask me, so where's your pony coming from? Where does polo come from? Manipur is the birthplace of modern polo, as is accepted by everyone across the world. So where does this game come from? What is this animal that they're playing upon called the Manipuri pony? For instance, it's an endangered animal. So because of that, I started researching and writing the Manipuri pony story first. And similarly with the silk story, I wrote a little thing and I was sending it to a choreographer friend who was looking for ideas for her new ballet production. And I said, why don't you, from Manipur, so I suggested, why don't you do silk, the story of silk, because you can do many things with it. Similarly, with the story of the deer that does not eat rice, the story of the rice goddess is something I also wrote up because I was recommending the story of rice as another theme for a ballet, which has been performed, by the way, in all across India and in Singapore and so on. So some of these come out of my projects. But the other thing that I was looking at is I was interested in animals. I like animals. You like animals? You like animals. And everyone loves animals. So you'll notice that all the stories have an animal theme to it because I was writing for young adults. And the age is actually even younger than you guys, Aditi and friends. So I thought that using animal as a sub theme, which I don't really state, but if you notice, it's all about cats and tigers and monkeys and elephants and horses and snakes and so on, right? So I kind of chose the stories that have animals in them. There are stories that don't have animals in them. But the older religion of the Manipuris, which is an animistic form, does have animal worship in it, like all old religions. The great religions of the world, like Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity and so on, they share a theistic God concept. Okay, we have God, whether it's Buddha or whether it's Krishna or whether it's Jesus. But before that, all cultures had nature worship, like the Greeks did, ancient Greeks. So because of nature worship, there is also a certain place given to animals. And there are always animals and people and gods are always talking to each other in these old stories. And that's the reason I chose some animal stories as well.
Great. So there seem to be a lot of soul connect between all the living beings, be it animals or the human characters, or even trees and insects and everything.
And don't forget the gods and the gods.
Yeah, and the gods, of course. So we hope that there are many more myths coming to life, penned by you in the near future. And Mr. Safar, your illustrations coming in a bit more, in the new books which we look forward for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just one last question coming in. Were there any challenges that you confronted while writing this book, and how did you overcome it? Because this would be a great motivation for the young writers, as your book has been released published and released in the pandemic. So, how did you overcome the challenges which you confronted?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I'm not a writer. I'm a conservationist, I'm a curator, but I do write and I do translate. So I do whatever comes along as I need to for my other projects, whether it is libraries or linguistics or ponies or polo or whatever, or art in this form, in this case. The I could not have done this without Penguin. It's actually Penguin who asked me to write it for children. I could have done this as an oral history project of recordings out in the field, recording ballads sung by the shaman priestesses of Manipur, documenting other things. I could have done another digital project as a conservationist. But when Penguin asked me if I was interested in writing it for young adults, I said, "Oh my God, yes, but I don't know how." So this is my first book written for young adults. So look, I'm not married. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. I don't know how to read to children. I've never done that. So I had to think back about what I was reading, Aditi, when I was your age. What was I reading back then? What books did I like? So I had to go back and to see how the children's writing was done. So I read the Panchatantra again, and I read fairy tales again, and I read Aesop's fables again, Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories, So all the stories I read when I was a child, when I was your age, 12, 13, 14, I kind of brought them back in. So with the research, Penguin's proposal, because I'd worked with them before, and then with the how to tell a children's story became a challenge. I don't know how to read to you. I don't know how much you know. What I did want to say is that I did not want to talk down to you and say, you're a beta, you're a beti, you're children, you don't know anything. I don't want to teach you. I wanted to have fun writing the stories, because if I don't have fun writing the stories, then you won't have fun reading the stories. That's my thinking, right? So I had to make it fun. That's why I put all sorts of things in it about cat's poo and the man with his runny nose and all that kind of things, So, so I had to rewrite it and pitch it at a certain level, because Penguin said it was from 8 on. And so, but I had also had to create a narrative from beginning to end. So when you have stories that are found in ritual and in prayers and song and manuscripts, they're all over the place. There's no one story. Every story is different. It's like my grandmother, who was not schooled, she knew only one story. Every time I said, "Grandma, tell me a story," she used to tell me the same story every day. And I loved to listen to her every day, every night. But every telling was slightly different, because that's the nature of oral storytelling. That's the nature of hand copied manuscripts. Every time you copy something, something changes. A comma goes missing. A capital T is not written properly. So every oral story and every story that you find in manuscripts are slightly different. So my challenge was to write one story. This book is very popular among, students your age, by the way, guys, in Manipur also, because these are stories they've heard in bits and pieces here and there, some from their dad, some from, Sita was like this, no, Ram was like that, but no real story from beginning to end. So when I wrote this story from beginning to end, young people in Manipur love it, because now they can actually read a book that starts with a beginning and has an end, with marvelous drawings by paintings by Sapha, for instance. And the book, as you know, you'll get your copies. It's so beautifully produced. Anyway, it's a pleasure to hold the book. So, so people love this book. People are buying this book and giving as gifts to each other, because it's easy to read. Young people read it, older people enjoy reading it, but it also tells a story. But if you say to someone, to a scholar in Manipur, "Is Somi's story of the deer, is it like that?" They'll say, "No, actually, I heard another story," for instance. I'll tell you an example. When the rice goddess, falls into the river, the deer has lied to her and said, this is shallow and this is deep, okay? But he was lying, right? So she walks into the deep water thinking she is shallow. So she starts drowning, right? My first version of the story from one source was that her father sees his daughter drowning below in the river, and he sends help, divine help, God power, right? And saves her. The story I heard from the balladeer is that she was drowning. She had reduced herself to a very small size, and she was drowning, and then a little fish came by and saves her. So I like the story because I like animals, and I was using animals, I preferred the fish version. So I put the fish version. But every story has many versions, limitless versions. And that's the nature of oral storytelling. And that's the nature of handwritten manuscripts. And that's the nature of mythology. You'll also find Greek mythology goes all over the place, so many versions, And that is why it was fun to write this book. And I hope it was fun for you guys to read it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is why this book is as endearing to all the students as it is. The takeaway what we could get out of this book and with your interaction is it's a great way to learn about the fables and the unknown myths that originated some hundreds of years ago and were told by famous balladeers and great grandmothers. It is a must read for all the children aged 8 and above who want to explore and deep diving into the mysteries straight from Manipur. And we really thank you, Mr. Somi and Mr. Saha, for actually bringing down this beautiful legacy to our children. They had received it as a gift. They really enjoyed reading it. And not only the children, I think the adults are equally engrossed in reading the book. And it brings out the child within you and it increases their curiosity. And hence a request to you, Mr. Somi, that we are looking forward for another edition of the book.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing, and this is, I would say this as a thank you, is that your questions from your students have been amazing, about Kalidas and about Ganesh and all that, right? Now, that is exactly why comparative mythology and learning about Manipur is not simply learning about Manipur over there, okay? Learning about Manipur makes you think about your own culture also. Where did the story of Kalidas? So now you're going to think about Kalidas all over again in a new light. Now you're going to think about Ganesh and Karthik in a new way, in a new light, after having heard another version that sounds similar but is different from some other place. So now you begin to know the nature of your own stories that you knew before, your own mythology that you have in your own family and in your own community, and then you begin to have new eyes and you have new understanding. And that is the fun about connecting between cultures. And that is so much the fun about talking to your students. So thank you very much, Principal Bhake.
Great. So it is actually connecting them to their roots. So
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful gift any child can get.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much, OCLF, for connecting us to such illustrious personalities who have been subtly contributing to the heritage of India, to cherish the heritage and rich culture of India. Thank you so very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye. Bye, Avani. Bye, Aditi. Bye. Prituja. Bye-bye.
Indeed, it was an amazing session. I personally loved the way you explained about Manipur. And at the outset, I would like to thank you, Somi sir, Safa Yumnam sir, and Jayashree Bhante ma'am for joining us today. And also a big thanks to the students for joining us today. We wish we get to witness you again and be equally enlightened as we all are today. And for my dear massive audience, I am sure that after witnessing this conversation about Manipur, you all are taking home an enriched version of yourself just as I will. Thank you for joining us today. Until I see you again, this is Himanshi Kandhari signing off.
Thank you. Thank you, Himanshi. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Somi,
you.
Hello.
around 300 students are already listening to you live. So, they are all happy.
I think we're saying goodbye right now.
Thank you.
Please, sir, if we can just, conclude the session now.
Yeah, we're concluding. Goodbye. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. This